Greetings, beautiful humans. Suzanne here. Welcome if you're just joining us. I'm going to be talking today with Dr. Rachel Allyn, and we're going to be talking about sound and pleasure, and I'm excited to have this conversation.
I'm here.
Wow, through the waves of technical blah, blah, blah.
I was using my voice to try to get to you via text to say, I'm here. I can't wait to talk to you.
Well, glad to talk to you, and welcome to all of you who've joined us and those of you who are watching this afterwards. As I said, this whole IG Live series is to introduce you to this work of Voice of Change, which is a comprehensive system of understanding where we got to the place where so many people are desirous of living into their truth and finding their voice, but have deep fear or shame around that. The injunction that we have either personally or in the collective against expression of who we are, against our innate creativity, and frankly and incidentally and not unrelated, the injunction against experiencing our pleasure, right? And this is Rachel is an expert in, and has written a book called The Pleasure Is All Yours. Is that right? That's the name of the book.
That
right?
is, yes.
Okay.
Which is supposed to mean I'm saying it to you as opposed to the reader thinking, oh, the pleasure is all somebody else's. But I think that's
it's all yours, right? Your voice is yours. Your pleasure is yours. So reclaiming that. And it's so fascinating to me, and I do want to introduce you, Rachel, but it's so fascinating. When I first started doing voice work, and really studying vocal cords and studying the vagus nerve and studying all the things, I started realizing there are these incredible correlations between this, what we could say the second chakra, the energy center that's often associated with our pleasure center and our sexuality and our sensuality, and the throat chakra, which is connected to our expression of truth and our expression of choice. And they're very interesting. And then I realized, well, of course, there's cranial sacral therapy, which is what happens in the sacrum happens in the cranium. What happens in the cranium happens in the sacrum. They're interrelated. And then got even more down the rabbit hole of when are the times when we get to actually make sound? For many people, it's only when we're having sex. That's it. Like, that's the only time we get to make weird, non-word related sounds. So,
yeah. And maybe sometimes sports might be another time. But yeah, I think that's why it is so important. And then even within sounds, it's so gendered around, maybe for a male, it's okay to express sound of like anger, but maybe not for somebody socialized as female. Whereas it's maybe more acceptable for a female to cry, make sound, that, and so there's all these rules that really limit our humanness, which I know is what is so wonderful about your work, trying to set us free from that.
Yeah. And it's fascinating to kind of look at, like, how did we get here, and how did humans go from in the past, in many, many places in the world, having created times and places for the movement of emotional energy through, not only through the body, but through the voice, to this point now where, unfortunately, if we allow ourselves to have an innate expression, oftentimes it is stifled, oppressed, silenced, and it is actually dangerous for us to use our voices in some situations. And even whole communities whose voices get silenced. And to me, this is such a tragedy. But let's because I do actually want to say hi, Rachel. Dr.
Hi, Suzanne. Hello.
Please introduce yourself and your work. And my first question for you might be after that. What do you know about voice and pleasure? What's interesting and surprising to you about that? Go.
Okay, right. Well, I'm a holistic psychologist, and so I really focus on mind-body integration and applying that to people coming to me with issues around relationships and sexual health. And then within that, I've really been curious about pleasure and the barriers to pleasure, and how, the ways that we can reclaim pleasure, because it's healing. And, it's interesting, both the body within Western science, the body has been really denigrated as really primal and something to be controlled, just as in relationships, pleasure, and in our sexual selves, pleasure has really also been denigrated and demonized. So I think that a lot of my work is I want to be the champion for these underdogs that are hugely, powerfully healing and such a part of who we are, and about our connection to each other. So really beyond just our own individual care, but collective care, which is, I know, something that you do so much work in as well. So I work with a lot of individuals, adults, and couples, and then do some retreats and some seminars, and then wrote that book, and just trying to get that out there to anybody who really recognizes they're cut off from their body. I talk a lot about bodyfulness, which really is about bringing in pleasure reclamation, which can be harder for some people than others.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what do I know about voice and pleasure,
yeah.
which, I think about so much from like, what are these barriers to pleasure, and what are the ways in which then we can release ourselves into pleasure, and the voice really being one of those ways. But the problem is that if people are cut off from their visceral self, or the ways in which so many people override their body's messages, or were learned to override those messages, and people can become so resourceful at not owning their shit, or not releasing their shit, or even their happiness, with repression and suppression and compartmentalizing. And so I think a lot of what I like to do is just start from the body up with, can you get more comfortable and familiar in your body's messages to build to that place of then being able to really understand them and then release them, which is a scary step. So a lot of what I do is helping people with more of like verbal expression. And even just helping to reclaim the pleasures of laughter, and of course song and singing. But then there's also that top down approach of like, what are the mental storylines, or what are the ways in which you're too self-conscious, or you have those, your ego tells you, who am I to say something, or I can't sing, or I know I've listened to some of your amazing Instagram lives this week, and talking about just how the skillfulness and the voice as this vehicle, and how so many people think that it's something that they don't have, even though it's just a matter of like really getting to know it.
Yeah. One of the whole classes is called How to Use Your Instrument, because the full body is the expressive instrument. Our voices they're not just localized in our throat. When we are making sound and allowing that sound to impact us and to shake us up from the inside out, and allowing that sound to express the emotions that perhaps we hold inside of us, when we allow sound to physically move us, and I want to show people how to do that, what happens is it becomes medicine for ourselves. So it doesn't even matter if any other people, accept it or like it or don't like it. It's like, oh, this is my gift to myself. My voice can become my gift to myself, my energetic teacher for myself, my energetic, temple, the safe space for myself. My voice can do that for me. And so one of the things that's really interesting, I always say, singing is either painful or pleasurable. It's rarely neutral for people. It's supposed to be pleasurable. And for many people, we've been taught to sing in a certain way that actually hurts. And I want to say, it doesn't need to hurt. We just have to create environment for it. And when we create the right environment for it, it's actually so pleasurable. I always say it's like, it's my favorite experience. It's better than any drug. It's singing moves us from the inside out. It opens things, and we go into this place where we have an empirical sense of oneness with each other. And that, to me, that's pleasurable. Like, it's pleasurable to feel oneness. It's pleasurable to self and source and other. And that's what sounding and singing does.
Yeah. And thinking about applying that really with the work that I do with couples, and, what a bonding experience to be in an erotic place with somebody, and to release just these really guttural, natural sounds with one another. And it requires obviously some vulnerability to do that. But I do think, what bonding that there is. And of course, there's something so powerful just about also touch. That's hugely powerful. But then that is a place where people do tend to give themselves permission to release during orgasm, or when there's sensual touch of any kind, and maybe even like getting a massage. But I've also worked with a lot of people for whom that's just, they're so self-conscious that they won't make a sound at all. And they want to, but it's like, they're so blocked here, and they know that it might enhance, their sexual or erotic experience. So we do a lot of work with really just like looking at different traumas in their life and the storylines that go with it, that have told them that they shouldn't make those sounds, or they're weird or bad or wrong for making sounds. So that's where I think that your course is such a good resource for people who just, they know that they want to, but they don't know how. How do you get people to just start to make the sounds?
Well, by doing it myself. But for me, it's a journey. For most people, I will try and start with some science, because science helps the neocortex to chew on something while the other things are happening, right? So that later on, when we're in the space where we're going, woo, making all these crazy noises and weird sounds, the some part of us is like, oh, this is scientifically proven, it's medicinal, right? We can quiet that part of us that needs proof.
The critic.
Yeah. And then I also try and, as much as possible, make it fun and playful, because again, playfulness is leads to, it's connected to our innate creativity. And for many of us, that playfulness at some point in our lives got squished, right? Or it got squeezed into a little box. And we'll explore that in this course. We will definitely do some what I call shadow stalking, and really looking at, like, where did these voices come from? Where did these stories come from? How are they living in me? What happens when I try and shift them or tell a different story? But leading to that place of finding just pure sound, I have to be really comfortable doing it in myself, right? And we all have to know this, we're going to meet our resistance here. The minute we start giving liberation to what has been hidden, or what has been actively suppressed within us, we're eat those voices of oppression that are endemic, right, in many parts of our culture. And again, for some people, it really is actually physically dangerous to live into their truth, or physically dangerous to live into who they are. And so I don't take it lightly at all. It's like, I try and make it light, but I know that it's a profoundly complex and nuanced experience.
Yeah. I always say that, even though I will call myself a pleasure expert, part of being an expert in that domain is really also being an expert in pain, and helping people to ride the wave of the pain and discomfort, and have those ways to self-regulate. And that's where I think voice and release is such a powerful way to self-regulate. Sort of putting on my somatic psychologist terminology here. And I know you had Hala on too to talk about that, but I wish that people could know that right within their own system, they have all these tools, and one of them is with releasing sounds. Like, I know when I'm in traffic, thanks to you and what I've learned, I now have had, for the past decade, it has really helped me to just go, ah, and I feel in my body, I feel the vibrational release, and I feel regulated, and then I'm breathing better, and it's just that whole chain. And so many people don't even realize that they, doing some of those things because they've labeled it weird, or they just, like you said, they don't know the science.
Yeah.
But it's like, within all of us.
Some of the steam, right? You take that's, for me, the first part of having that sense of being able to communicate in a way that's effective is, I have to let off steam. I have to allow the top to come off the pot once in a while. Otherwise, I'm really not going to be able to communicate in the way that I want to communicate. And then, so I can use sound to do that. And then I can also use sound to ground, to center, to focus energy, to gather, to potentize and gather the life force that I need to do the thing that I need to do. So for me, sound, it's very interesting, because it has all these uses. It's not just about release. It has self-regulation capacities. It has amplification capacities. It has capacity to walk us through many of the states of being that we need to be, to do our work in the world, to be authentic people in the world, all that kind of stuff.
And then when we have some of that toolbox of being able to connect to our voice, that's where we can have pleasures of different kinds. And a lot of times the word pleasure is reduced to just being about sex and eroticism, which is absolutely magical, of course. But I think of how I like to draw attention to all these other types of pleasure that sort of like foreplay, for pleasure in the bedroom, but sensual pleasure. So just think of all these sensual moments that then we can attribute, like a sound or, some sort of connection to our voice to, or playful pleasure, and, laughter being maybe the main way, or other ways to creatively make sound. And then flow states, like when we're really dialed in and channeled, what sort of voice, or that, what ways we want to speak to that or make sound of that. So there's all these different environments that can really tap into different aspects of our voice in a way that's pleasurable. So I think it's important people learn that.
I think it's interesting that, for many people, it's almost more vulnerable to be seen in states of pleasure than it is to be seen in states of pain. I get that all the time. Building joy, building ecstasy into a situation, a collective situation, and people are
Yeah.
like, "Oh, I'll cry in front of you, but for me to be in my full ecstatic
Yeah.
joy, no, that's too much."
Yeah, I think because it's hard, because our brain being hardwired to also really protect us, and for some people, they haven't brought balance into that protector part and that letting go and sort of being and reveling and things, that part of them. And so, yeah, I think that there's this fear of that people will take advantage of them, and it's not always conscious. It's obviously right, very can be pre-verbal or subconscious, but there's just this know that I don't want to be seen that way. Or a lot of people, I work with a lot of people who are professionals, so to really step into their pleasure, then they're not able to integrate the fact that you can be spiritual, you can be professional, you can be sexual, you can feel pleasures in these different ways, and when we show that to others, it's inspiring to them. So it is really too bad when people are so afraid of just letting themselves be seen, embodying their joy and their pleasures and releasing and expressing through sound. And
Yeah. And
so
that's what I'm dedicated to, is just like, normalizing it. Like you're normalizing this conversation about pleasure, right? You're normalizing this conversation about, we get to experience this. It's been, as you said, vilified in our culture, or commodified in our culture, our pleasure, our sexuality, but it's actually innate to who we are. It's a natural expression of who we are. And that's what I'm trying to say too. The natural expression of who we are is expressive beings. We are artistic. Humans are ridiculously creative, just given a little permission and a lot of push sometimes, right? Oh, do that
yeah.
thing I want to do. And I just want to, I just keep coming back to, like, this is who humans are. Humans are hardwired for this sense of expression, this sense of living into all of the full spectrum of our emotional being, and experiencing and expressing our pain, and experiencing and expressing our pleasure.
Yeah.
That's healthy. I want to normalize it, basically.
Yeah, yes, that's so needed. And I also love how you really bring ritual into the conversation so much, and how that's something that I've just been leaning into more and more in my life, and just experimenting more too with plant medicine, and how some of those could have a lot of rituals. And there have been rituals that I've experienced with you. It's been a while since I've seen you in real life, but
I know.
that have, what was amazing is that through your leadership of voice and me being there and with others, it was really this pathway into a deeper level that released tears, and tears that were really of like love and joy. All the things. I mean, love and joy and fear and sadness and all the things that I couldn't have gotten to if I hadn't been led by you through voice to get there. So I think sometimes that's another thing maybe people don't realize. It's like, we work in sort of different ways. Every day our body shows up differently, but we maybe need certain things to kind of lead us into that deeper core stuff.
Yeah.
And with sound and singing and voice expression, you can just tap into some of that deeper core, the core wounds kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of an immediate connection to this very beautiful, I would say, enhanced or more authentic state of being that happens when people really open emotionally to the song. And it is interesting, because in many spiritual traditions, there's actual conversation about, like, singing is it is the way we connect to our enhanced self. It is the way we connect to source. It is the way we connect to the divine, or whatever you want to call it. The names don't even matter. It's like, it's how we, it's a direct doorway in to a liberatory state of being. And that, to me, is a divine state of being.
Yeah.
We could
Yeah.
have a whole conversation about that, but this is what I'm talking about. Like, and I'm especially thinking about the Bhakti Revolution, which was an idea of when we sing the names of the gods and goddesses, we have direct access. It's an empirical experience. It's not theoretical. It's actually, I am singing God, goddess into myself. I am becoming it through the song. Wow.
Yes, that is wow. And I think for people who maybe they don't think of themselves as, maybe they don't believe in God, or, it doesn't even have to be about that, but it might surprise them at where it leads them to a spiritual place. I mean, I think for me, that's where with a lot of embodiment practices and voice practices, it's led me to the spiritual path, which was an amazing surprise, because I had thought of myself as somebody who, that's not for me. And so, like, peeling back the layers, but it's not possible if you're blocked here, if you don't if you don't let that happen. Because, and being blocked here is really just another way of like being, you know, blocked here and just in that constriction,
Yeah.
which is certainly not pleasurable.
No, no, it's not. And you know, to be fair, I don't necessarily ascribe to any even one spiritual pathway. I think that it is a very personal thing.
Yeah.
But what we're talking about is this idea of we could even take the divine out of it and just say this deeply, profoundly human experience, which is amplified, enhanced, and more subtle when we tap into these states of being that are otherwise you know, stopping the full life force of our being from flowing. It's a little esoteric, but like that's one way I can understand it is if I remove, as you said, if I'm using sound and movement and other practices to remove those blocks, what happens is I have a bioavailability to the truth of this moment, and that is an aliveness like none other I've ever experienced, frankly.
Yes, yeah, it is an aliveness. That's a great word for it. And like you said earlier, as far as for some people needing some of the science behind it, I mean, there really is more and more science. Because there's this part of me that's kind of the neuroscience nerd that is always looking and researching and for the people who need the validation from science. And there is increasing science about the fact that especially collective coming together and sharing in voice collectively, how it increases compassion for others and altruism, and that it really dissolves that sense of separateness, which absolutely we need so much right now more than ever. So that's, I think, a beautiful thing about your course is that, and people they're going to join online, right?
It's a live online course, which means it's full engagement, right? I mean, I'm saying to people, if you have to miss one, you can watch it afterwards. But really, this course isn't one where I'm lecturing, you're receiving the information, and bam, we're done. It's really about an ongoing conversation and the way that we are engaging together. And it will require us to participate. And I know that is, you know, I think some of us, I myself have sometimes get used to like on Zoom, especially like, I'm just sitting here, I'm receiving this information, and I'm just screen, and I'm going to do the best that I can to break that so that we feel like we are engaged in this process together, that we are colleagues, that we are supporters for each other, and that we are we're on this journey together. That's really important to me, precisely because of what I said, this sense of co-regulation, or the sense of really actually impacting each other, and the truth of that, because that is true. We do impact each other, whether we want to admit it or not.
I know. Whether even we've been holed up in our homes for a couple of years, there's still this energetic impact that we all have, but it's a great opportunity for people who still are at home and from all around the world can join.
Yep. That's right.
And is it ongoing? It'll happen again?
It's 6 weeks, and then I generally do I offer Voice of Change once a year. I'm going to maybe do it twice a year this year. And then I also offer a class called Art of Ritual, which is about like, how do you create ritual? What's the purpose? What's the reason? How have people done it from the beginning of time? How does it apply to our lives now? So I'm going back and forth between these two courses. But right now, we have actually a really good group of people doing the course, including you know, some friends I've had for a long time and one of my relatives. So it's going to be a fun journey.
I want to be in it. I'm going to be in Joshua Tree for a couple weeks in May, in which I don't know how I would access it, but that's why I'm really glad that it'll happen again, because I need more of you in my life. It's been too long. Because you are a pleasure all your own that I need in my life. Talk about receiving and co-regulating. Comes from you.
Awesome. Thank you.
And I also always think about you because long ago you pointed out that so much of my tension is in my jaw, and it's literally like a daily, weekly practice because, you know, it's just so habitual. But when we think about the constriction, so I always soften it, or when I'm with clients, I sort of let go. And, you know, if you have a really tight jaw, that doesn't really help with sound and singing and voice, right? Gritting your teeth. So
it's actually a symptom of that the personal and maybe even collective clamping down on our individual voices and our collective voices. It's like everything around us is telling us to go like this, and this, you know, we're working to go like this instead and see what unfolds and what gets expressed. And I'm telling you, it's amazing what humans are capable of when we give our permission.
Yeah. So anybody else out there, if you are clenching grinding your teeth, practice releasing, massage the jaw, let it go, tell that part of the body it can release, doesn't have to take so much responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think of you because you first really pointed that out. You're like, I just noticed in your jaw there, and yeah, that's holding me back. So
Okay. All right. Woohoo. Okay.
yeah.
Ms. Rachel Allyn, I so appreciate you and the work that you're doing in the world. I deeply believe in it. Please don't stop. I know sometimes it can be intense out there in the world to try and get your work out there, but I bow to you and the work that you're doing, and I think it's really important. And I hope that those of you who are watching check out Rachel's book and check out her work, and hopefully some of you, if not all of you, will join us for the Voice of Change course, which starts May 4th. The registration is only open until the 25th, so get in there. And the link is in my bio, in my link tree. So
yeah, and I'll put it on my Instagram and on my YouTube too, and include the link as well. So we got it. Yeah, get all those people needing more pleasure, needing more expression to get on board with this.
Yes, thank you. Okay.
Thank you so much for having me.
And mwah.